All right, y'all. Now we're getting into the fun part of the video. I think all the videos fun. Anytime I have the opportunity of educating, I think it's fun. We had to get some more gloves. I didn't change this glove out. I probably should. It's pretty sweaty. But let's go ahead and get into the frame of the handgun. So for starters, we're just going to just literally start with the frame of the handgun. And then you'll see me kind of start breaking some of the stuff down and then going from there, okay? So the frame of the handgun. The frame is a reinforced polymer structure used to handle and manipulate the handgun while housing additional internal components. Okay, as you can see, right, when I'm explaining this, I'm showing you my Glock 47 frame, which the Glock 47 frame is the same as the 45 and the Glock 17, and there's perhaps some other frames that use the same size frame. But when it comes to the frame, there's going to be different sizes of the frame of different Glocks. However, the internals are going to be the same. How it functions is going to be the same. So rather somebody's using a Glock 20, which I do have, a Glock 26, a Glock 23, a Glock 21, a Glock 27, a Glock 34, Glock 44, you name it. We can start running down the list of all the different Glocks. At the end of the day, when it comes to the OEM factory Glock, it should function the same. Now, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be predicated to Gen 4, Gen 5 Glocks. So if you see something that's like, hey, my Glock don't look like that, cool. But for the most part, outside of like those little things, this is still going to apply for primarily all Glocks. All right. So the frame. What is the purpose of the frame? It houses internal components, just like I said. What internal components am I referring to? I am referring to the trigger system, which the trigger system composes of, you know what? We're going to save that explanation on its own thing, right? The trigger system composes of a few things, right? It houses the slide stop release, right? Which we'll talk about that in a second. It houses the slide lock lever, which we'll talk about that in a second as well. And it also houses the magazine release, okay? And as well as other things as well, which we'll, kind of discuss in, other parts of the video. All right, cool. So the other thing, mounting accessories, that is the purpose and function of the frame, to mount accessories. So what accessories I'm referring to? As you can see, there is a mounting rail on the front of the handgun. Not all Glocks have this, but newer models or newer generations of Glocks will have this. And as well as when it comes to the size and how much room that you have on the frame, a subcompact Glock is going to have less room. So you're only going to be able to use subcompact weapon lights or subcompact devices on the front versus a compact frame such as this. You're going to be able to use compact size weapon lights. So for the most part, this is what the front rail feature is for. The frame being made out of polymer allows also the following. So again, the OEM factory frame, so this is not an aftermarket frame, but the OEM factory frame is primarily made of polymer, right? So but why is that, right? So as I've already explained, Glock is perfection. Glock has figured out how to mass produce a gun and also have it be reliable. So extreme level of durability comes with the fact that it's made out of polymer, resistance to harsh environments and corrosion, and also with it being made out of polymer, it is lightweight, aka lighter in weight. So if you have something such as a steel or carbon steel or whatever your slide is made out of, and then you end up having like a metal frame, that's a lot of weight for you to be carrying around, especially if your purpose of carrying a gun is for concealed carry, right? This is going to be your EDC. But Glock was thinking ahead. So they said, you know what? We're going to make the grip, the frame out of polymer so that, there's less weight, but it's still able to operate like it should. And so that's pretty much the main function of what is then known as the frame of the handgun. Now, this is what we're about to get into some breakdowns of the handgun. So what we're going to do is next, we're going to talk about the trigger system. In order for me to kind of talk about the trigger system, I can first show you where it sits, but I want to show you in its entirety, in its totality, right? In order for me to do that, we got to be able to take apart what is then known as the internals of the frame. Now, I think everyone should be able to do this if you are a gun owner, if you are a Glock owner. You do not need to go to a store for them to do this part. So I advise people to click on this video, stay tuned to the video to watch what I do. So there's a couple of things that you could do. Some, especially if it's new, there's going to be a couple of techniques that you could do to get this out easier. So what I'm going to do, this is all live. When I say live, I'm doing this as I'm recording this. So I may mess up on this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see how hard it is for me to push this through. It's pretty hard. I just tried to do manual pressure. So after you do manual pressure, you can then do a couple of things. One is you can kind of push down on the inside of the this slide lock release. So the slide lock release is right here. And then what you can do is you can actually take a punch and push down on the inside. But basically what that does is you're essentially trying to loosen up the tension that's being put on this trigger pin. It's a trigger pin, but you're trying to loosen up the tension that's being put on it, so it's easier for you to push out the pin. Once you do that, right, and you're still having troubles with pushing the pin through, the other thing that you can do with this is, again, I don't advise this, but hell, you can get away with this, okay? You want to take something and you can actually kind of like hammer it through. Nice and simple. You're going to feel a little bit of resistance, but it should, as you see right here, which is the trigger pin we'll talk about later, be able to come through. Once you remove that, you want to also remove the trigger pin housing pin that's in the back. That one's pretty easy to push through. You don't need anything hard to press down on. Okay, so once you do all of that, it frees up these things for it to be able to come out like it should. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually remove what is then known as the lock block, the locking block, okay? We'll talk about that in a second. So we'll put that inside. And then we move the slide. We move the slide stop release lever. We move that, which we will talk about in a second. And so now what we're focused on is we're focused on the trigger system. So the way that I remove the trigger is you want to be very careful with this. You don't want to bend anything. You do not, I repeat, you do not want to bend anything. So don't use any devices. Don't use a punch. Don't use a punch. I go in and I use my bare hand. I take and I go to where the ejector is and I'll pull up. Right? I put my thumb under and I'll pull up. As you can see, it's starting to pull up. And just like that, we just got done removing what is then known as the trigger system. So let's go ahead and explain this and break this down really quickly. It's pretty easy. So with the trigger system in itself, right, I'm trying to be careful. I got some gooky on my hands, right? This is the OEM trigger system. It is a mechanism located within the frame of the handgun that comprises of the following: the polymer trigger shoe, which you see right here, the polymer trigger shoe. This is called a trigger shoe. Reason why, it actually kind of looks like a shoe or a boot. I think that's why they call it that. You have the trigger bar, which is made of steel. So this entire thing right here, a bar, kind of, you know, would resemble a bar. And just to kind of show you, this is detachable. You can remove the trigger bar in itself. Just to kind of show you, this entire part is the trigger bar. This part that's attached to the trigger bar that kind of extends out, protrudes out, is the cruciform. It looks like a crucifix. So you can kind of figure that that's the cruciform, right? And the trigger housing with the ejector attached to it, right? So this entire kind of triangular piece right here is the trigger housing. This steel part, this silver looking steel part, is known as the ejector, right? This is the ejector, which we'll talk about that in a second. And this silver part right here, if it can get in focus, this silver part, let's use my, right? Hey, stop that. This silver part right here that I'm pointing to, this is known as the connector. Okay, the connector, which is also made of steel. So let's put this all back together. Let's put that back together. So boom. So what is the function and purpose of the trigger? All right, I know it's going to sound silly. But it's pretty self-explanatory, right? So for starters, as I've already explained this before, two other times, the trigger system is part of the three safety system that the the Glock has, right? So trigger safety, boom, which is the first safety feature. The firing pin safety, which is the second safety feature, and the drop safety feature, right, which is the third safety feature, the drop safety. Okay, so what exactly is the trigger safety? Well, as you can see with the trigger shoe, you have the shoe in itself, and you have like this internal lever that actually is located in the center of the shoe, right? And so the only way for the trigger to be fired is if this internal safety trigger is decompressed simultaneously while pulling or reciprocating the trigger backwards when you're pulling on the trigger. Okay, that is the only way for the trigger to initiate the firing process, because if you pull the trigger backwards without decompressing this safety trigger, the gun will not fire. I repeat, the gun will not fire. There is something in the back right here that will catch onto the frame, that will actually prevent this from moving backwards, causing this trigger bar, part of the trigger bar, to push up the safety plunger to allow for the striker to move forward. So hopefully all of this stuff is making sense when I'm explaining, okay? So this trigger system is responsible for initiating the action that leads to firing the chambered round through the barrel of the handgun. Okay, it is responsible for preventing accidental discharges, and it is responsible. And the connector part. So let's show you that really quickly. The connector part of the trigger housing, which is also part of the trigger system, right? That is responsible for helping regulate the resistance in the trigger pull. So that means the smoother, or the how shall I say this? The better the connector that you have, the lighter feel that you're going to feel on the trigger pull when you're pulling the trigger. Okay. But at the end of the day, don't worry about all that stuff right now. The main thing is to worry about the purpose of this handgun, because if something goes wrong, chances being it's going to be with some type of internal system or internal structure that's going on within the handgun, especially the trigger system. You definitely want to pay close attention to this right here, right? So that's the trigger system, which we're going to actually drop back into the handgun. Keep it nice and simple. Keep it nice and simple. So how you saw me do that, this is a drop-in system. Boom, sits right there, sits right there. No tool was involved, so I dropped that back in. So next we're going to talk about the locking block. The locking block, nice and simple. So the locking block is an irregular square shaped steel block that's pressed in between the inside of the center portion of the frame. So similar to how you saw me kind of take down or disassemble the frame, what happens is right here in this section, in this kind of center section, this is where this locking block actually gets inserted. You can see two holes on the side right here. What happens is that is where this trigger bar, this trigger pin actually goes through, right? It goes through it to keep everything locked in, into the frame of the handgun. So what is the purpose of the locking block? Okay, what is the purpose of this? The purpose of it is responsible for aiding in maintaining trigger and slide stop release lever in place. So this is primarily responsible for maintaining the slide lock release lever, right? Get this in the frame, right? Maintaining placement of this, and also maintaining placement of the trigger in your handgun, in the frame of the handgun. So nice and simple. We'll put that back in place in a second. Let's move on to the next. We have the slide lock lever. Now, I purposely didn't take this out the handgun, but I do want to show you, right? So the slide lock lever, you can actually get a good look on the side. It's this lever-like thing, okay? Right here. Okay, it's a stainless steel lever that's held in place by a spring. So the spring, you can actually see it from this angle right here. It's a stainless steel lever that's held in place by a spring located within the frame of the handgun, with each side of the lever partially extending out of the side of the frame. So the whole purpose of it being extended out the side of the frame, as you can kind of see right here, is so it is responsible for ensuring, number one, let's explain this really quickly. The whole purpose of this, which it's gonna be hard to find this information. This is why I really advise people to watch this video. It's an updated 2024 video by a pretty cool dude. I will say, right? I ain't some geezer out here just trying to, pass on information. I'm a pretty solid guy, right? So the main purpose of this slide lock lever, which again, this is a slide stop release, but every time you Google a slide lever, this is going to show up, even though this is a slide stop release. And this is a slide stop lever. Okay, so let's break this up, or slide lock lever, not slide stop, but slide lock lever. Okay, so what is the purpose of it? It's responsible for ensuring the slide stays on the handgun. What do I mean by that? There's these grooves right here. I'm trying to think. You can kind of see it right here. There's like these grooves right here on the slide lock lever. And what that does is it actually gets a hold of, it partially gets a hold of the barrel of that's located inside. It actually gets a hold of a few things. It gets a hold of the guy rod, and it gets a hold of, I believe, the barrel that's inside of the handgun. And what it does is it's responsible for maintaining placement, or helping maintain placement of the slide to the frame. So that's what that's responsible for. But the other primary feature of this slide lock lever is the pressing or pulling down on the slide lock lever. So pulling downward after the trigger has been pulled, right? So boom, you break the trigger has been pulled, right? So now the trigger is sitting back, similar to what you saw me do when I took down the handgun, right? The pressing the slide lock lever downward after the trigger has been pulled and racking the slide slightly backwards, not fully, but slightly backwards. You don't want to reset the trigger, aids in the disassembly of the handgun. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you now. The normal OEM slide lock lever, it's not your friend. This is not your friend. It's gonna be difficult to take this gun down unless you got some meaty fingers that you can take and simultaneously put downward pressure on it while you're trying to disassemble the handgun. But at the end of the day, that's how you do it. And practice makes perfect. So I really advise people to practice on the technique in terms of taking down the handgun, because it's very easy. And if you really want to take down your handgun because you need to clean it, which, newsflash, you need to clean your gun, it's very important for you to be able to do a simple task like that, if you ask me personally. Next, let's go ahead and move on to the slide stop release lever. An ambidextrous steel lever located within the frame of the handgun. Nice and simple. It's ambidextrous. Why do I say ambidextrous? Because whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you will be able to use this device. Now, the ambidextrous feature is really primarily only for Gen 4 and Gen 5 Glocks. I repeat, for Gen 4 and Gen 5 Glocks. If you do not have a Gen 4 or Gen 5 Glock, it's going to be right-handed only. So for my left-handed users, you kind of you kind of, you know, asked out the picture. So what is the function of the slide stop release lever? So it actually does a few things. So for starters, it is responsible for locking and catching the slide within a reciprocated state whenever the slide stop release lever is toggled upwards, meaning that boop, you flick it upwards while racking the slide backwards. I'm going to demonstrate this once I put this back together, but pretty much this is helping catch the slide within a reciprocated state, right? However, and it also is used to release the slide from its locked back reciprocated state whenever the slide stop release lever is toggled downward. So putting downward pressure on this particular lever while the slide is in a reciprocated state causes the slide to boop, go back to battery into its idle position. So that is one of the main features of this particular device. So nice and simple. So next we're gonna go ahead and get into the trigger pins. It ain't really much to talk about with the trigger pins. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's really nothing to talk about with the trigger pins, but it's my duty to really share this information with you. So we're gonna start with the main trigger pin. So if you're dealing with like Gen 4, Gen 5 Glocks, right? I know like older models, they have like a 1, 2, 3 pins. So 1, 2, 3 pins. But as you get into like the newer models, like that third pin is unnecessary. So really they just do now just a 1, 2, it's just 2 pins. So the first pin we're going to talk about is actually the trigger pin. This is important. This is a needed pin, a much needed pin. It is a small steel rod with a black ionized finish that's located within and runs through the locking block, trigger shoe, and frame of the handgun. So this is important. Okay, the purpose of this is that the trigger pin is responsible for holding the trigger shoe in place. You can make the argument that it's responsible for holding the locking block in place, but honestly speaking, the locking block is pretty much wedged into the frame of the handgun. And whether there's a pin run through it or not, I believe the locking block was going to stay in place regardless. But in terms of the trigger shoe, no, that trigger shoe needs to be held in place by some type of structure. And therefore, that's what the trigger pin is responsible for doing. However, when you move on to something that's less important, this is the only thing that I'm going to show you that pretty much has no function. It has zero function at all. To this day, I cannot find a function for it, but I'll still explain to you anyway. It is a small rod. It is a small steel rod coated in a black ionized finish that's located within and runs through the backstrap portion of the handgun. So kind of when you saw me take down the handgun, I pressed in a punch through the back part, right? The back strap of the frame or the back strap of the grip. This is what this trigger pin, this is a trigger housing pin. So this is a trigger pin, right? The bigger one is a trigger pin and the smaller one is a trigger housing pin. And the function of it, it has no function. I'm gonna be honest with you, it has no function. Even if it wasn't there, the gun will still shoot and the gun will still function. So there you go. So let's go ahead and move on to the other things before we start actually putting this gun back together. So that leads us to our 2 last things to discuss and talk about, and then we can close this chapter of everything that you need to know about a Glock. So let's go ahead and talk about the mag release. The mag release, okay? So it's a small serrated, because there's serrations in there, as you can see right there. If it shows up, serration. It's a small serrated piece made of polymer that's located within and runs through the grip of the frame of the handgun. Gen 4 and Gen 5 magazine release are ambidextrous. So basically, as you see right here, since most people are right-handed, they're going to have the mag release on the right-handed side. However, as you can see right here, they have it to where you can actually take this apart, meaning take it out, flip it, and actually have the mag release run through out the right side of the gun. So left-handed users can now use the mag release. So ambidextrous slide and ambidextrous mag release. Is one of the ways you could say that. So the mag release is pretty simple. It is literally responsible for catching and releasing the magazine. So as you see right here, the magazine is being caught. It is caught because when you insert the magazine into the handgun, the mag release catches it, and it doesn't release this magazine. The mag release does not release the magazine until it is decompressed in, and it drops it, and it catches it by catching on to this kind of like divot area right here. Okay, so that's the main responsibility of the mag release. It's really nothing much to talk about other than that. So that leads us to kind of talk about the magazine. Last but not least, we could talk about the magazine, and I'm gonna actually do something special for y'all, simply because I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'm about to take this apart anyway. So the magazine is a spring-loaded rectangular shaped structure that's encased with a stiff metal tube with a polymer coating built around it, as well as having a spring in the inside of it in terms of allowing for rounds to be loaded into it. So I'm using snap caps, but basically doing so allows for the decompression of the follower, right? Decompression of the follower to allow for rounds or bullets to be loaded into the magazine of the handgun, right? So we're gonna go ahead and empty that out really quickly, right? We'll pick those later. So what I'm about to show you guys is pretty unique with this, okay? So the purpose and function of a magazine is pretty simple, right? The build and quality of the magazine prevents deformation, even in case a magazine was to be dropped or exposed to extreme environments. So dropping this magazine from high places, punching it, hitting it with hard objects, this is really built to be able to survive those things. And that's why I love Glocks so much, because how strong their magazines are. But the other main thing, as you can already guess, is where ammunition is loaded into prior to being chambered into the barrel of the handgun. Nice and simple, okay? So what is in the inside of the frame? Sorry, what's in the inside of the magazine? So I kind of want to show you this because we'll do a separate video, or we can make this like part of a separate video as well. But I want to make this part of this video purposely. So there's tools that people can buy to be able to punch in and take apart the magazine in order for them to clean it out, to replace the spring, to get an aftermarket extension on it, so it goes from 17 rounds to, let's say, 19 or 22 rounds, right? Because you got a +2 or +5 extension. But at the end of the day, let's say you don't have this tool right here to be able to punch in, pull, to take it apart, right? Another way that you can actually take this apart is, once again, I learned this the ghetto way, the hard way. You could take a punch like this, insert it into this circular piece right here, boom, and then take it and just really just, and then, hold on, right? I kind of messed up a little bit. But basically, you just take that in there, ram it in there, and then what you do is you start pulling on it, and then boom, just like that. You see that? It came loose. Once it gets loose like this, you continue to follow through with the pressure you continue to follow through with it. Follow all the way through with the looseness. Now, what you want to do is do not move your thumb. Do not move your thumb from this, because there's a piece inside of it. It will go flying. I repeat, it will go flying. I want you to see every step of this process, okay? So once you get to this step right here, boom, this piece is now off. This piece is now off. Now you can reinsert this, you can put this back on regardless, but this piece is now off, right? And the spring can now come out. So the thing that got pushed down is this right here. So just to show you, this is a piece inside that sits on top of the spring. It sits on top of this spring that you're pushing down with this punch. So like I said, you can go out and buy a separate piece to make it easier for you. But if you already have something like this in your house, you don't need to buy this additional piece. Go ahead and save your money. Okay. So this is what this looks like. There's the follower that's attached to the spring that sits within the magazine of the handgun, right? That allows for, you know, the retention that houses the ammunition inside of the magazine. Okay. These things can wear out, so you may have to replace these. Quite frankly, if you look online, there's not a lot of people that replace them because Glock works really well in terms of maintaining the integrity of their pieces and the longevity of it. But if you want to put it back on, right, nice and simple, you will put this right down like this, put this follower piece back on. And I'm only doing this for the sake of this video. I'm gonna be honest with you. After this video is over, I'm taking this back off. but you put this back on. Okay, it may be a little difficult, but listen, all things that's easy and may not be worth it. And then as you're inserting this part back on, you kind of want to put a little bit of force on it, and then boom, just like that, your magazine is now back to where it was. It can now go back into the gun and be released like this. So that pretty much concludes the video. So let's go ahead and assemble this back together just so y'all can actually see me do that. So boom, we're gonna put the slide release back in, and there actually is an order to all of these things. Do not put this out of order. I repeat, do not put this out of order. Okay. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and put in the trigger housing pin, especially since it already doesn't really do anything. So that goes in there just like that. So boom, perfect. So the next thing that I do from inserting there, now that my block is in, my slide releases in and everything, what I do is I like to align my hole up first. So all the things that needs to be in alignment before inserting this, I like to make sure everything is aligned up. There's a few ways that you can actually put this in. One being that you can actually insert something on the other side, right? So watch this. You can actually insert something on the other side prior to the insertion of the pin to make it easier for the pin to actually be inserted into. So let's say, for instance, I have something like this on the other side sitting through the hole, and I go and put something like this in the hole, and then the moment I lift up, it's supposedly supposed to make it easier for those things to kind of like make it easier for the trigger pin to come through the hole. That's one of the ways to do it, right? So you can kind of do that. And in the beginning part, like I said, putting this back in, it's gonna be not as smooth in the beginning, but you don't have to put a lot of force into it. You don't have to, you know, use a hammer or anything like that. I would say once it's majority in like this, so it's already in for the most part, I would say from there, you can kind of, you know, take something and kind of like beat it in a little bit. So you can take something like this and just like I ain't got no hammer next to me. I got my water bottle, and then you can take and kind of beat that in a little bit like that, right? Once it's in majority of the time, right? Boom, everything is in place like it should, right? Let's put this in just a little bit more, just a smidge more, okay? Just a smidge more. Make sure everything's on camera, right? Gotcha. Perfect. Right? Make sure everything's nice and maintained. And so, boom, we come back to the Glock or the slide of the Glock. Everything's in order. Right? And by the way, let me show you this really quickly. So, as you see right here, there's areas within the frame of the handgun where the slide actually meets the frame, and it aligns with it and slides completely on it. Okay, slides completely on it, just like that. So boom, just like that. And just to make sure everything's in working order, boom, just like that. Just like that. Boom. And just to make sure, boom. Ooh. We have reached the conclusion of the video. If you liked everything that you've seen in the video, leave some in the comment section. And just to kind of put this a bow on it, just to kind of show you what it looks like, everything, bullet, load it, boom, load it, load it. When it gets ejected out, watch this fly out, boom, just like that. Just like that, okay? Nice and simple. My name is Jamal. I am here to provide any information when it comes to Glocks. If you liked everything that you've seen in the video, if you liked everything that you've seen in previous videos, if you liked everything that you heard when it came to me breaking down and everything that you need to know about Glocks before making a purchase, leave some in the comment section. And if you have any questions for me, be sure to hit me up in my Discord channel, my Instagram, and all those good things. And I'll be sure to reach back out to you. That's pretty much it for the video. I personally stand by and recommend Glocks for people. And if you're someone that's looking forward to buying something like this, I'm glad I was able to help you make that purchase. Until then, I look forward to talking to you guys on the next video. So it's your boy JamalHaki. Peace out.
That if I said so, gang on Disassemble. He gon' duck, ain't no Super Nintendo. Ran out of shots, now my click go extendo. He's doing hands and check on his mental. Can't tell who it is, gotta look up his dental. A whole lot of shooters, the strap is essential. That boy got erased like the end of a pencil.